What's up, guys? It's been a while. We're just gonna jump right into it. We're gonna start doing this cooling system overhaul on the E36 M3. All my parts are here. So we got like all OEM or OEM equivalent, and then a CSF aluminum rad. So some hoses, fan clutch, water pump, thermostat, new water pump pulley, new thermostat housing from Race German that's already tapped for a sensor and a gauge, new expansion tank, some new hoses. And yeah, we're just gonna jump into it. This is gonna be a crazy video because I've been working some overtime, so we're gonna be jumping back and forth from like if I'm wearing different clothes or whatever, because it's all gonna be on different days, but we're gonna get into it. We're doing this. I filmed it on my phone. Obviously the clip will be in here. But yeah, you're just gonna take this front nose panel off, and then you gotta take the fan clutch off with the fan clutch tool. I used an Air one, but then I ordered the BMW one, so we'll be putting it back on with the BMW one. But yeah, so after that's in, we're gonna get into the video now and start taking this apart more.
It does come out.
There you go. So yeah, after all that other stuff's off, I'm working on getting this expansion tank out. There's a hose on the bottom of it. Of course, I just made a huge mess down there and possibly break the shroud. Oh no, it's not breaking. So it's got permanent hose clamps on it, which makes me think, I don't know, maybe it's never been done, but I highly doubt that being an E36. So yeah, pop those hoses off the expansion tank. Got to feed this other hose back through the shroud, and then I'll be able to pull the whole shroud out. So now that the expansion tank's out, you can see that huge split down the middle of it. Just blew the complete backside of it out. So that's definitely trash. Now that that's out, should be able to kind of slip this out. Got a couple hoses in the way. Alright, shroud's out. That design is pretty terrible with that little hose coming through here. Maybe I'll cut that hole a little bit bigger before I put it back in so it's easier to thread through the shroud. That's your old shroud out. So since we're doing everything, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and pop this upper rad hose off, the lower rad, and just start pulling it apart. There you go, so part of the radiator is broken off inside the upper hose. So that's good that we replaced that. So this part of the radiator neck right there. Well, that's the rest of the coolant in the system. But did both hoses off. Trashing them for sure. So before anything else, we're gonna pull this rad out. No idea how this thing comes out. Oh. Well, that's how they come out. I'm not really sure how these clips work, but there you go, there's our old rad out. So there's our pile of old parts. Gonna reuse the shroud, none of this other stuff's getting reused. And now we have access completely to the front end of the motor to get that thermostat housing out, the water pump, redo everything in there, and then we'll start putting it back together. So with everything off, you really see just like that buildup of that sludge on the side of this motor. Just really showing how many miles this thing really has on it. Yeah, now we're in there. We got a good look at the thermostat housing. We're gonna pop that off next, and then go down to get the serpentine belt off, water pump, replace everything, and start going back together. Old thermostat housing off. There we go. Yeah, must have been a good O-ring on that, huh? Yeah, we'll clean all that out before we put it back in. Yep, so the thermostat's out. And now we gotta get in there, get that serpentine belt off, pulley, and we get the water pump out. So yeah, just as I'm taking these bolts out, I'm kind of putting them where they're gonna sit. That way I don't lose track of any of them. Got a big trash pile full of parts that are trash. And yeah, about time to start popping the belt off. I'll always draw a diagram of the belt routing when I take belts off. and then we can pop that water pump pulley out and pull the whole water pump out. So since the air conditioner doesn't work, I've decided against even taking this belt off, and we are just going to cut it off. Yeah, nice. Oh yeah, that's probably never been replaced. It's just straight missing chunks of it. So I got my belt routing diagram drawn up. I'm not an artist, but it's pretty much exactly what I do at work. And we're gonna pop this serpentine belt off. I'm gonna try to get a good angle for you guys, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to do it. And then we'll pull the water pump out. This tensioner is just an 8mm, so I'm gonna try to get it off with an Allen key. I'm not sure if it'll, oh, it does give me enough. Awesome. Maybe? I'm probably blocking the whole camera right now, but serpentine belt is off. Should have probably ordered a new tensioner, but didn't think of it at the time. Pop these off. Not sure why mine's so stuck in there. Don't want to break the block doing that. It's a newer water pump, but it's a plastic impeller water pump. I don't feel bad about replacing it now. Yeah, and that O-ring was super dry. That's why I was stuck on there like that. But yeah, you can see plastic impeller versus metal impeller. This metal one's gonna last way longer. It's not gonna deteriorate the same way that this one did. Clean out the bore a little bit. Put the O-ring on the new one, a little assembly lube. We're gonna slide it right back in there. And now we'll slide it back in. Perfect. So I'll use the impact taking nuts off, stuff like this, but I will not put it back on with an impact. We'll throw these back on. These weren't too tight anyway, so we're not gonna kill them. I always tighten stuff like this in a cross pattern. Just make sure I don't pull it in uneven, but it did sit pretty flat with that O-ring. So that's our water pump in, and we can just start going in the reverse order of how we took it apart. So this is not just across from each other. I just learned that the hard way, that it is a certain pattern. So be careful of that when you're putting your pulley back on your water pump. And then I'm gonna hit these with a little impact just to tighten them up, because it's too much work to try to hold them from spinning, and tighten it with a ratchet. So now we're looking in the water pump hole, or the the thermostat hole. We're gonna clean that up as well. That's got like a sealing O-ring. We actually try my best to film this as good as possible. Got a little assembly lube on my O-ring here. It's gonna have an arrow for up. Should fit pretty snug in the housing here. Doesn't have to be perfect with the weep hole. It's just gotta be facing up. So there you go. And now we can go get our new race German thermostat housing and put that in. With this piece, the O-ring's already in the groove, so we don't have to do anything with that. Just put it back on the car. I kind of don't like the way that fits. Alright, so we got our race German thermostat housing with the hookup for a video sensor, and it's an easy bleed, so hopefully it won't be too bad bleeding the air out of this cooling system after we're done with all this. Got our new water pump pulley on. We're gonna go ahead and throw our serpentine belt on, but I'm gonna time lapse that because I hate putting these things back on, and it's gonna take me forever, and I'm gonna look like an idiot. So we'll time lapse it, get that serpentine belt back on. I do have a new one, and then by the time we're done that, we will be ready to start putting more stuff back together. Belt's all back on, and I guess now we're gonna start putting the hoses back on, sliding the new rad in, and just wrapping this job up. Blow it through the cord. it's time to start putting the hoses back on, and I noticed that these Mishimoto silicone hoses are too long to use with the race German thermostat housing. And it actually appears that the factory ones are too, but I can at least cut them because they don't have a preformed end. So I'm a little bit disappointed in that. I won't be able to use this upper hose. Assuming the lower fits, it looks a little bit more of a simple route. Yeah, definitely if you're gonna buy these parts, make sure to remember that, because you can't run Mishimoto stuff with the race German thermostat housing, which kind of sucks because I did spend extra money on these hoses. Alright, so disregard what I said about race German. They did disclose you should, well, it says recommended not to use silicone hoses. They should just say you can't use silicone hoses. But I cut the OEM hose. It fits on there pretty well. I'm gonna have to modify the heat shield right here for my airbox, but we can deal with that. The lower Mishimoto rad hose did fit. It's also rubbing the frame rail, which I hate, but we're just gonna have to deal with it. Maybe this is gonna come back out. But I also don't know how CSF figures these rad hold downs work, because the rad's still pretty loose in there, looser than I would like it, and the tabs actually didn't fall apart, so might have to figure something out for hold downs. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and throw the fan clutch back on, put the shroud back in, got to put the reservoir back on, hook up that hose, and then we're gonna be pretty much wrapped up, and then we're gonna just fill it up with coolant, and this whole overhaul will be pretty much done. Alright, so the whole shroud is back in, the reservoir's in. For such an expensive radiator, the CSF doesn't fit all that great. And that could be on my end, or it could be on the radiator's end, but kind of had to like really muscle the shroud in, and the clips don't fit anymore. There's not enough room. The reservoir is basically rubbing this valve cover bolt. The hoses all look clear though. Everything's in. It's much tighter than it was at first with the rad and all in, so that's a good thing. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to throw this clutch fan back on, and I did get the BMW tools. I'm not using the air tool, and we'll run it back on with that, and I'll show you guys how that works. You probably won't see it because of how cramped it is in there when you're putting this clutch fan on, but we're going to throw that back in right now. So I'll show this out of the car since you're going to probably not be able to see anything I'm doing, but the idea of this tool is this holds 2 nuts on the water pump. This will hold the fan clutch nut. That way you can hold it and tighten it at the same time. Alright, now to wrap it up, we got our bleeder screw out. Took like 2 3/4 gallon of coolant, which is, I think the spec is 11 quarts. I got the BDO gauge that's going in the car wired up right now. It's kind of hard to see, but that's reading like right around less than 180. It's been idling for a little bit. It did overheat a little bit. I must have had a big air pocket. Not really liking the amount of steam coming out of the exhaust, but I'm gonna ignore it. Gauge is dead in the middle. It's hard to see. But yeah, pretty much I'm just gonna let it run and add coolant as it needs, and this is pretty much a wrap on this cooling system overhaul on my E36 M3. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.